Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَا يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. That whoever chooses other than Islam as their deen, okay, as their way of life and their objective, okay, then it will not be accepted from them. And then in the hereafter, they will be from the losers. Okay, the subject of this short series, okay, a few talks, is the issue of quasi-Islam, quasi-Islam. And so I'm going to define quasi-Islam, but the first thing that I want to say is that this discussion needs to go everywhere, including the imams and the board members and decision makers in our community and every Muslim, okay? Because the primary source of quasi-Islam is the masjid itself, okay? And quasi-Islam is destroying Islam in America. All right. So now what is quasi-Islam? The word quasi, it means something that appears, okay? An apparent thing, all right? And it's used to differentiate between an appearance and then a reality, all right? And the fuqaha, the jurists, and the great scholars in Islam's history said that the Sharia is concerned with matters of reality, okay, not appearances. All right. So now, we have masajid, alhamdulillah, and some of them are even built to look like a masjid. So we have the appearance of something from Islam. And then inside the masjid, we have more things that makes it look like, this is an Islamic place. And then we have somebody called imam, and, sometimes they dress up to look like a imam, I guess, I don't know, some kind of costume. And they give a talk, and it sounds like we're talking about Islam. And so people come into the place called masjid and make salah, and then sit and listen to some talk, and sounds like Islam, alhamdulillah. And then we leave and go on with our lives until the next time we come to the masjid. And I'm going to say that what this is doing is it is an illusion of Islam, and it is causing delusion in the mind of the Muslims. And it includes the imams, and it includes, all the administrators, and, okay, it's the entire community is a quasi-Islamic community. It is not a community of Islam. And Allah has obligated us to Islam. And Allah has said that something like a quasi-Islam will not be accepted. Okay, so it's very serious, all right? And then there are other verses in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns, okay, for one thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that most human beings do not follow anything except dhann, which sometimes is suspicion, but it actually also means like assumption. Okay, assumption. And assumptions are not realities. Assumptions are not truths. Okay? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a warning about people who will be the biggest losers Yawm al-Qiyamah, are those people who go to Allah and they lose themselves and they lose their families, and they thought that they had been doing good in their life. Okay? So do you see how important it is to actually understand this Islam versus quasi-Islam matter? Okay. Now let's go back a little bit in history, because I've been here 30 years. The first masjid built here in DFW, or one of after Masjid al-Islam, okay, the American Muslim masjid, and then Masjid Hassan in Fort Worth. Then the next masjid built was the Richardson Masjid, and that was built in the early 70s, and so we're talking about 45 years, okay, 45 years. And in that 45 years, we've had over 2,300 Jum'ahs. Okay, so 2,300 weeks have passed. And assuming that there was at least one Jum'ah every week, okay? But the reality is that behind the appearance of having Islam here, our community loses 90% of the youth. And a community that had Islam in it would not be losing 90% of the youth. Our community loses 90% of the converts. And a community like our Prophet's community in Medina was bringing converts in, okay, by the droves, by the multitudes. If we had Islam here, we would not be losing the converts. We do not have Islam here. We have quasi-Islam. We have something that gives us the illusion of Islam, and then the Muslim goes around through life with the delusion in the mind that they're doing good and everything is fine, and alhamdulillah, we have Islam. Whenever we want it, we just have to go to the masjid, and alhamdulillah, we will be good Muslims. And the imams go through their days and weeks and years doing what they do. And, okay, and it's all a delusion. Because in 45 years, we have not gotten to real Islam. And the root of the problem is, what was the condition of the Muslims when they arrived in America? And I'm telling you, because I was here 30 years ago. They arrived not knowing anything about Islam whatsoever. And the vast majority who even made the effort to start beginning to learn Islam, they started after they arrived here. Okay? And honestly, that includes many of our imams. I mean, I know one of the first imams in this area, one of the first, okay, really did not know anything about Islam. He started learning about Islam after he arrived here, okay? And so the beginnings of the community then were based on not knowing Islam. Allahu Akbar. And so now 30 years later, 45 years later, we have built a community of quasi-Islam. And the root problem is that the community was built when Muslims did not know Islam. And until today, the Muslims do not know, and the imams do not know, what are the fara'id of a community. And among those fara'id, the number one thing, okay, at least the number one mission of the entire deen is the human beings entering Islam. It means to convert human beings. That is the mission of the deen. It is the number one thing in the deen, and in 45 years the community has done nothing. That's quasi-Islam. Okay? We don't have a community of Islam. We have a community that gives the appearance and the drunken delusion, and Muslims are just happy, alhamdulillah, mashallah, we have Islam. Oh, okay, no, you don't. I'm sorry. You have quasi-Islam. So I'm going to cut this off here and then pick it up later with some more description and discussion, inshallah.